Good morning. According to my time clock, it's time to start, but I think we're going to give people a couple of minutes. We have a pretty light agenda as well, so we should be able to get all the way through it regardless. Hi, Ted. I like your yellow mask. It's very distinctive.
Hi, Sean. They were giving them out at the registration, and I have a whole bunch of very boring white ones, but it's very hard not to fall to the allure of bright and shiny colors. The advantage of being remote, though, is you get to go and just show off your beard instead.
Mm-hmm. Sure, Murray, jump in.
Are you hearing me now?
Still pretty faint. I can hear you, but it's pretty faint.
Okay. Same problem as before, thanks. I'll keep working on it.
All right, Niels, unless you got any objection, we'll get going here in like 2 minutes.
Test again. How's that?
I think that's better.
You think it's better? Let me try one more. Turn it up a little more. There, how's that? More echo.
Much more louder.
All right, thanks.
Does not want to seem to let me share the slides via the share preloaded slides, so we're going to have a little screen fun. All right, I'll do this. I don't want to do that. That's a bad idea. Let's share this. And hopefully everyone sees this now. All right, it's probably time. So welcome to Wish. Please make sure your video is turned off unless you're speaking, as well as your microphone. A bunch of links for the Meet Echo, how to get in, the audio channels, Jabber, and the minutes, which is also the note-taking mechanism as well. I believe there was a QR code that comes in at the beginning that when you came in the room is that you need to scan to make sure that you get added to the blue sheets. It saves everybody from having to worry about cleaning pens. Welcome to Wish. Niels and I are the chairs. Hello. This is only the second session of the IETF meeting that you may have been at. This is Note Well. Reminder of the various policies that you agree to adhere yourself to because you're participating. Lots of things in here, lots of it about IPR policy, how to work in the group, anti-harassment, code of conduct, copyright, patents, etc. If you have any questions, we can answer them. Other people in the room can answer them. If you see or feel that anything's being done that's out of line with those, please contact the Obuds team. And this is kind of one that we wanted to highlight, which is the code of conduct, is basically to try to treat everybody with respect, try to speak as slowly as possible, trying to limit the use of slang. I feel like they put that in just for me. Dispute ideas, using a reasonable argument. Use your best engineering judgment, find the best solution for the whole of the internet, and contribute to the ongoing work. Thanks. And our agenda is pretty light today. So we're going to go through Administrivia. We have one draft and we have some implementation experience that got bumped from the last time. And then we'll have some open time. I don't know if we're going to need 30 minutes to talk about the draft because there's only one open pull request and 2 issues. And so we may be able to close that out and actually go for working group last call with this one draft. And that's really it. So I wonder, is Sergio available? Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, I think that my part is going to be fast, but we can spend later more time just talking about the steps and things like that. Mhm. So you can go to the first slide.
Say again.
That can you go to the first slide, please?
Hmm.
I'm not sure if I well I can. Mm, okay. No, this is not. I don't know how to do it.
Because you shared it, it should be working.
Yeah, but in the decks ready to be shared, there is only the with implementation experience in Janus, so there is
Right.
no other deck there.
Right. Can you shoot them, the slides to me again via email, and I can see if I can get them out?
Okay. So, yes.
Yeah, because those came through. Oh, unless you updated those.
I updated it in the Google Doc that you sent me.
Yep, and then I didn't upload the new version, so that would be a problem. Let me go do that now. Apologies, everyone.
That I have restored the slides because it seems that you have overwritten my slides, but I have put it again in the slides deck on Google Drive. So they should be there.
Yes, I see them now. Trying to read. Do you want to share that again, or should I do it?
Can you share them while I upload them?
Yep. Ah, turns out I can't. I would have to restart Chrome. Sorry about that.
No, still not there. Yes, the slides are updated in the data tracker, Lorenzo, and also you go to the meeting materials in the slides. They are updated also. Yeah, this is it finally.
Sorry about that, folks.
Okay, so um, this is the list of changes between the previous version of the whip draft and the latest one. There is one minor change related to the link relation type of that we have in the draft that will probably has the a URN of with the URN IETF params whip, and we have renamed it just to iServer. And the main difference between the two drafts is the last open point that we have for the draft that was how to handle patch requests that could be out of order before between a patch request that was doing sending new historical candidates from the one that was doing a restart, and what happened when they were received out of order and how to solve that. The problem was presented last in the last IETF meeting, and it was agreed that we were going to implement it with the HTTP entity tag, and that's why uh, the patch, the pull request that has been already merged into the draft and made available in the second version is covering that. What the draft the changes have done is that now we are associating a unique value of an entity tag to each I session. This entity tag is an opaque value, so meaning that if the WIP the WIP clients has not have to take any kind of or try to get any semantical value of it. It's an opaque value, and it is up to the server how to choose the value and how it is generated. It could be just an auto increment counter, an UUID, or for example, the I username, and it is up to the server how to implement it and how to use it. The entity tag value must be returned both in the 201 created response to the original post request, or in any 200 OK response to a patch request that it is triggering I restart. So this means that every time there is a new I session, because it is either the initial one or because a new I restart is triggered, the entity tag value has to be changed, and report it back to the client. Then the patch request for trickle ice must contain an if match header with the last known value of the entity tag value, and then the server can check if the entity tag value that it is in the if match header is the same one that that he has for the ice session, and if it doesn't match, it means that the patch request is out of order, and then it must reject it with a 412 precondition fail as specified by the in the ETAG RFC. And then the patch request for ice restart must contain an if match value of an asterisk, meaning that it in regard that the ice restart must happen regardless of which is the value of the entity tag. That means because you want to trigger the restart always. And also, this is the one thing that we should check. I think that it is valid according to the HTTP specs. Is that we should only need to send or should only the web client should only send the if match header for the patch request and not for the other requests that are not changing the I session, for example, in the HTTP delete. And also as a consequence of that the patch request for sending ICE candidates must contain the entity tag of the IRIS stars, then the client must buffer all ICE candidates that are gathered after sending an ICE restart until it receives the updated entity tag in the response. This is already something that we need to do anyway in the initial request, because you cannot send ICE candidate until you receive the response to the post request. So this is something that it was already requested or it was already required to be done before on the original when starting the session, and now we are also having to do it when there is an error start ongoing. So yep.
We have two people in the queue. I don't know. Do you guys want to do your points now, or do you want to wait till the end?
I have ended, so it's fine for them to. So I'm fine to go in the queue.
All right, Julius.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So could you please clarify, and I'd like to see it clarified in the draft, how the server determines whether an SDP fragment is a restart or a candidate? Does it just look at the if match header, or does it examine the SDP and look at the ufrag value, or does it do both?
This has not changed. That how is this that and it is specified in the RFC for the ICE fragment, and you have to check the username and password to see if they have changed between the one that you have and the one that it is for the one that you have for the client or not. So this is according to, I don't recall the number of the RFC.
Okay, sure.
But you have to check the SDP fragment.
And is it not enough to check the if match value for an asterisk?
You shouldn't. I mean, let's keep things where they should be. I mean, probably it will work,
okay.
but they are different mechanisms for different things. So I think that an implementation should check the ICE username and password to detect that it is an IRE restart.
Okay, that's
not
fine.
The match. Just because the if match can have different semantics, so we might be modified in the future. And
okay, and I will have another comment about the document as a whole, so I'll go back to the end of the queue now.
Okay.
Jonathan, do you want to hop up? Thanks.
Yeah, Jonathan Lennox. I think the other another point you want to say is you can't start an ICE restart while an existing ICE restart is pending. Basically, you can't have more than one ICE restart in flight at a time. That's probably a requirement you want, otherwise things get confusing as to which one actually is the current one. I've seen this, like, nobody would probably do this on purpose, but I've seen this like when a device's network is flapping and it just thinks, oh, I have to do another ICE restart right away. So you probably want to say, wait till the previous you get a response to the previous ICE restart before you start another one.
Yeah, but what would happen if, Jonathan, one question. That's that's one. What would happen if, for example, you have a flagging network, as you said, and the previous ICE restart is not completing, so you have to wait for the timeout of the HTTP request? I will never. So
I
the
don't know,
whole point of.
maybe, or either that or you figure out how to handle it. The problem is that if you've got more than one request outstanding at a time, you're not sure which one actually, is the current state.
Yeah, but for example, I would say that the ICE restart happens because you are switching networks, so the previous HTTP request is not likely to have been received.
Or you didn't receive the response, or it was received but you didn't get the response.
Yeah.
Yes. Or you haven't gotten the response yet. Who knows? But yeah, no, I agree. Well, I'm not sure what the requirement should be, but we should have a description how to handle this, because if you're not sure which request actually reached the server first, you could be uncertain which one you're actually supposed to, which one you should actually switch to. So you might need some logic there. This is a case where the fact that SIP actually has a total sequence number ordering helps, and the fact you don't have a total sequence ordering here confuses things.
Okay, so maybe just the timestamp for the response would be enough for that to know which one is happened before.
Hello, John.
Hi,
One
Harald.
thing I didn't understand in the description of patch. When you do a patch, does the ETAG value change or not?
Depends of depend if it is the patch is for a nice restart. If it is a nice restart, the entity tag will change because you are creating a new ICE session. But it is if the patch request is for sending a new ICE candidate, it will not change.
Okay, can you make that clear in the doc?
Okay, I will try to clarify.
I was trying to figure it out and I couldn't read it from the doc. Okay. And that's a comment to Jonathan. There is no universal ordering of candidates in SIP either, or rather, candidates don't exist in SIP, so we're outside of SIP here.
Julius?
Yeah, so that's a comment not about the latest changes, that's a comment about the document as a whole. If I understand the document correctly, the intent is that both the client and the server are monitoring ICE consent and reacting immediately to a retraction of consent. Is that correct?
Yeah, but this is as WebRTC works, so yeah, we have not made any change there. Yeah,
sure. But I'm saying that I feel that this should be stated normatively. So if you look at the places where consent is mentioned in the document, there is normative language only in 2 places, and it feels incorrect, and it feels incomplete. Sorry. So either you don't use normative language at all for ICE consent and refer to the right document by saying that you obey another RFC, or else you use normative language and you state precisely the behavior of the server and the client. And here you're halfway. Okay, from an editorial point, it feels really weird. in that you do mention 2 details in normative language and refer the rest to the WebRTC documents. Okay, so I feel that's an editorial issue, not a fundamental issue. So what I would like, I might be the minority here. So I feel that you should be stating that in normative language clearly in this document, even though it repeats other documents. But that's just my opinion.
I don't have a strong opinion on that. I mean, I will just would like to get input on what is the best way of doing the editorial of that. I mean, I'm fine with both ways. Not sure exactly which is the correct one of doing that, but I will be fine to change it to whatever is the most appropriate one.
So perhaps I'll mention the thing that initially bothered me. So in the last revision, you add the fact that in any case, the server must react to a retraction of consent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's a normative language. And I was wondering here, are you adding a new requirement here, or is it something I'm already doing?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I think that it is valid concern. I'm not sure exactly what is the formal way of doing that in the SVC, so we can just check it and modify it to whatever best practice is for this. But I'm fine. I mean, I understand your concept. So
thank you.
Adam, go ahead.
Thanks. So I wanted to comment on what Harald was saying. I think we really want to be careful here is that we don't try to define the e-tag semantics here as much as pointing to the behavior described in 7232. And from that perspective, I'm not sure the answer is correct that it doesn't change when candidates arrive. I think when you're patching a resource, it's changing the resource value, and so the e-tag is necessarily going to change. But again, I think that's instead of defining the semantics in this document, we should point to 7232 for them.
okay, but I will like to ask you if you can. I mean, as make a small PR, just trying to, well, at least so I can know exactly what or where are your concerns, or just try to put a GitHub issue so I can check exactly which part of the document needs to be changed.
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. I was
Okay.
more responding to the discussion in the room here. I'm not exactly sure what the text says at the moment, but I'll look at it and open a PR if there needs to be a change. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that this is the trade-off is how verbose do have to do in the document, so it is explicit about what needs to be done by a WIP implementation instead of having to look at too many different drafts, or at least to have a more clear idea of what needs to be done. But obviously, we need to be precise on the language. So
Sergio, from experience here, I think the ISD has waffled over the years whether they want lowercase language if you're repeating requirements from other drafts. As long as you're consistent to make sure that we know where the requirement came from, whether it's new or imported from another document, that's fine. The only problem with repeating the requirement is that it gets changed in the base document and not in the other document, and then there's this mismatch problem. But I think long as you're clear to say as defined in RFC empty squat, in section blah, comma, then you put the requirement, I think it'll be fine.
okay.
The queue is now drained, so you can continue with the presentation. Sorry.
Yeah. So next slide, please. So, well, I said that. So I think that I would like to talk about next steps. There are no outstanding issues in the draft. There are two pending ones in the GitHub repository, but one is a no one by team that I will check with him. I don't think that he's on the meeting. No, but it was one from the very beginning, and I don't think that it is relevant anymore. And the other one was about if we should specify more about the HTTP error response code. I think that we are already doing that for the most of the requests that have a semantic or that we need to provide responses in case of something that happen. And for general errors like not found or things like that, or internal server error, I think that there is no need to define that, as everyone should just follow the HTTP response code that are already specified. So I'm not sure exactly what is the procedure of continuing with the draft. Well, we need to make some editorial changes, but probably not sure if we can go to the working group last call, or if we need to make these editorial changes before doing so.
So Sergio, what I'd like to see is to have you clear out the issues. If they're old, like close them out. And the other pull request is just kind of like lingering there. If you can close those out, and then anybody else can get their stuff in as quickly as possible, and then we can go to a working group last call.
Okay.
Julius,
Please.
So I'm so sorry, Sergio. I'm really sorry, but I disagree with you on the error handling issue. And the reason I'm sorry is that it's horrible. Defining precisely all the error values is horribly tedious work. And I feel that that's not something that you should leave to the implementer. So if I'm implementing the server side of Wish, I don't want to have to go through all of the HTTP RFCs in order to find out which is the right error value to send at a given point when I have a failure. And when implementing your draft, I have had the problem. So I wanted to get it done. So I have to say that I was more or less sending errors randomly. And that's something I felt the need for. Guidance telling me that if you have this kind of failure, send this error here. So some of them are obvious. If I have an implementation failure, if I have an unexpected error, I send internal server error. That's fine. But in cases where the client is sending something that mismatches and so on, whether to send, which of the 400 errors or 500 errors to send, I feel that the draft needs a little bit more work on that. And I'm really sorry because it's horrible work.
No, but I mean, I'm not good. What I can do, this is the typical that please feel free to submit a PR for solving that. No, but I'm not going to. But I mean, yes, for example, how exhaustive can we, do we need to go into this? Because, for example, do we need to specify what happens if someone sends us an invalid SDP when in the patch request? I think that we shouldn't. I mean, this is already a standard HTTP, and we don't need to reference the what code needs to be returned. If, for example, instead of an SDP, we get a JSON or something. There are a lot of things that we should not be specifying, because it is just how HTTP works. I mean, you have error responses that are defined for the common cases. I think that we have to define responses, for example, for when there are semantic issues. For example, I cannot think of anything right now that it is not in the draft. So it would be good if you could say some example, and we can check if.
Sure. So there was one on the list, which is you sent me a candidate that I don't understand. Mm-hmm. Do I ignore the candidate and return 200, or 202, I don't remember, or do I inform the client that I couldn't pass this candidate? Okay,
Yeah, but
it's tricky because you can batch the candidates. Okay, so you answered something which I agree with. Ignore the candidate and return success. But I feel that it should be in the draft.
yeah, no, no, and I have added that in the draft.
Okay.
But if you check, this is not about what error code to return. It is what is the behavior of the server.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's these cases. I completely agree that we have to add anything that we can find in the server in the draft, for example, because this is not just specified which is the error code to return. It is if this is valid and what should be the behavior when receiving this kind of or having this kind of candidate.
Okay. What happens if you send me delete for a resource that no longer exists? Do I send 404, but that used to exist? That has
So
been torn down, that 404?
yeah, I mean, it is standard for not found. I think that this is the most clear example of still something that I don't think that needs to be on the draft.
Okay.
I mean, the first one, I agree that it has to be in the draft, and it is in the draft. What to return if the resource is not found is the counterexample of what I don't think that it has to be in the draft.
Okay. Offer with codecs that I don't support?
This is the SDP negotiation. You have to return as an SDP with the
Oh,
codecs that
right. Okay. That's a silly one. So sorry.
you,
That's
you mean
unnecessary.
so?
That's
So I mean,
unnecessary.
yeah.
Okay, then I'll look for the draft and see whether there are any other concrete cases that I miss.
Is I get your I feel your pain, but I think one way that we start to ferret out a lot of these is actually by doing the working group last call. So I'd really like to get there in the next couple of weeks where we can fire this off. So I'll be watching the repo, and Sergio, I'll be talking with you to make sure that we make sure everything is dutifully knocked off as much as possible, and then we do the working group last call and see where we go, and then we can start talking about all the other issues of sending meta tag and language support, subtitles, etc.
Okay, so I think that because I have already been working with some people that are implementing WIP and are thinking about, I have received a request about how can we add more functionalities to WIP. So I think that my general question is if once we have the WIP draft published or ready for publishing, if we should be working on adding new functionalities to WIP. For example, the ones that comes immediately in mind to me is how, for example, sending metadata alongside with the with the audio and video. There are a lot of specs already available that are used in the traditional streaming that we could support. And for example, multi-language support, if we want to support it and how, or for example, how do we do subtitling with WIP? That it is something that probably I have a proposal ready to start being working on with like for sending web BTT over data channels, but this is a kind of outside of the scope of the working group because we are not supposed to do any new draft or new specs for this kind of things. Probably this should go to ABT core and then we have to reference it from here. So not sure exactly how should we extend or if we should extend the working group to handle these things or how we should do it.
Sergio, I too have the same question, but I guess we'll need to figure out how to do that because I know that we initially tightly scoped this working group's charter. So we may have to huddle with our ADs to figure out what they want to do, whether it's, this goes away and they all get dispatched or they all go to AVT core or wherever. We'll definitely be looking at that. If you have ideas, I think the right thing to do is to start dropping drafts and then we can start thinking about it.
Yeah, I was just checking our charter, and I think, yeah,
as Sean said, like we need some work to figure out how to proceed with it.
Thank you, Sergio. I'm going to be looking forward to getting this one in working group last call, so we'll work through that. Lorenzo, I believe you're up, and we can drive the slides from here, so you can just see next slide.
You can also try to pass the control to me. I can try to use the mobile interface over here to control the slides.
Absolutely. How do I change it over to you?
You can just hover over my name in the participants list, and there should be an icon that says pass control to Lorenzo.
Okay, let's do that. There we go. Look at that. It has. I believe I'm doing that now.
Yeah, it seems to
All
be
right,
working.
cool.
Okay. Yeah, we added this new feature. Why not use it? You know.
Awesome.
Okay, I'll be brief, so I won't bore you too much with all this. I just wanted to share some implementation experience with both a WIP client and server that we implemented as an open source tool, and in particular using two completely different WebRTC stacks, which was also helpful in terms of integration and interoperability as well. So I won't go too much into the detail on the implementation itself, so you can find more information in that blog post if you're interested. And I also made a presentation at a conference in Chicago a few months ago where I also went a bit more in detail about all the different aspects. But I'll share some details about both the server and client-side implementation. So for the server side, we based it all on our own Janus WebRTC server, which is an open source implementation of a WebRTC server with different functionality, including an SFU. And the SFU is indeed what we used in here. So specifically, Janus uses its own JSON-based API. So rather than embedding the WIP API inside Janus itself, which is what Julius did in Galean, for instance, if I recall correctly, we chose a simpler and more loosely integrated approach, which was basically of placing a tiny wrapper in front of Janus itself, which means that we have a small server implementation that sits in front of Janus that implements the WIP API, and then it translates all the interactions on the WIP side to interactions on the Janus side. So it translates the APIs on the fly. And of course, nothing needs to be changed on the WebRTC stack because that doesn't change. So it's a very thin layer on the signaling, on a signaling level. And we implemented it very quickly using Node.js. So it's basically a very basic Express-based REST API for what implements the WIP API, and then the Janus integration is done programmatically as well. And of course, it only takes care of the ingest part. So we make sure that the video gets to Janus, and then what happens after that is out of scope of the WIP server itself. So if you need to distribute it somehow, that's up to you. And as I mentioned, this is completely open source. So if you want to give that a try, you just need to clone that repo, and everything should be working. And just to give you an idea about how it works, so as I mentioned, it's very simply an application layer in front of Janus for what concerns the signaling. So you have a WIP client talking the WIP language with this simple WIP server. The WIP server translates it to Janus requests, which means that eventually you end up with a WebRTC peer connection between the WIP client and the Janus server that is being controlled by this simple WIP server. And as far as this translation is concerned, it's actually quite trivial, which means that the same process could be done with other media servers as well. In this case, for instance, this is the HTTP post that originates the publishing process, which means that as soon as we receive a new offer, we need to pass this to Janus somehow. And since we are using the SFU plugin with that, it means that we need to create a connection with Janus, create the resource that we need to talk to Janus for that. And then we join an existing SFU room as if we were an actual participant, even if we are not. As soon as we receive an answer back, which means that Janus has taken care of the negotiation process, we can send that answer back via WIP back to the participant, which means that then the negotiation for the WIP producer can start happening. And of course, the WIP server also adds the needed resources, for instance, the the location header so that you can then interact with the resource after that. Which means that, of course, we also support handling trickle candidates. And this is quite trivial because in this case, we just need to translate between the SDP fragment format that WIP uses and the JSON-based trickle signaling that Janus uses instead, which is relatively straightforward also when you group candidates, so no problems there. Of course, what happens when you start exchanging trickle candidates is that the actualize and DTLS exchanges are going to happen between the producer and Janus itself. So the WIP server is not involved in the process after that. For ice restarts, the process was a bit more complicated just because on the WIP side, we just exchange the credentials, not the whole SDP, while Janus expects the whole SDP to update a session to trigger a restart, which means that the WIP server needs to keep basically a copy of the original SDP that was sent via post. And so anytime that we receive new credentials from the producer, we just swap the credentials in the SDP that we had before. We send it to Janus, we receive a complete SDP back, and then we extract the new credentials from this answer and only send those via WIP instead. So a bit more work, but not really that complicated. Tearing down a session is also quite easy because we just need to basically tear down the resource on the Janus side whenever we receive a delete. Of course, the counterpart may also be happening, so we may be detecting a peer connection going down because of ICE or DTLS, and in that case, Janus can intercept it and notify that via the Janus API to the WIP server that is controlling it. And when that happens, the WIP server can then clean up the resources automatically, so that if a peer connection was closed because there was a DTLS alert but no signaling involved, for instance, we can still take care of cleaning everything up accordingly. And of course, I mean, WIP server is nice, but we also wanted to have a WIP client to test it all. And we didn't really want to use a browser for that, because even though a WIP client basically needs an HTTP stack and a WebRTC stack, and so the browser is the obvious choice here, I wanted to test instead a more native solution, because that's what most broadcasters use anyway. So they use applications like OBS or Extreme or others, which are all native solutions that allow them to produce a broadcast in a more controlled way. Unfortunately, OBS WebRTC does exist, but does not support WIP at the moment. It did support WIP in a very early stage last year, but right now it only supports the custom Millicast protocol. So I basically chose to use GStreamer for the purpose, because it does come with a WebRTC stack in WebRTC bin. And I actually had already used this stack for a few other applications in the past, so I was partly familiar with it and I wanted to play with that. And most importantly, it is very modular and very powerful, which, as I'll explain later, basically allowed me to do some more prototyping and doing some interesting things with all these right away. And all this is also open source if you want to play with it a bit, so I encourage you to do that. And as far as the futures, there are some limitations. So it's pretty much complete in terms of adherence to the spec, but there are some limitations. So we do support trickle, settings, turn either in advance or via the link header as specified in the document. We support authorization via tokens, delete, and so on and so forth. We can also do non-trickle if you want to, even though the spec does mandate support for trickle. And we have a way to force turn in case you need it, which would be pretty much the equivalent of calling ICE transport relay when you do it from the browser, which can be helpful in some cases. And we chose to make the audio-video pipelines completely customizable, which means that you choose, using the GStreamer format, what you want to capture and how you want to encode it, up until the WebRTC part that is taken care of by the WIP client, which again gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what you want to capture and how you want to send it, which was helpful in a few different use cases in particular. The problem is that at the moment, WebRTC bin has some limitations. So for instance, it does not support ICE restarts yet, which means that I could not test that part so far. And there is a pull request to add support for that, but it's still stuck for a while. And besides, there's also another limitation that we mentioned on the mailing list, which means that once you create a peer connection object, which means once you have generated your offer and sent it somewhere, you cannot add a stun or turn server after that point, which means that we cannot use, for instance, the link header in response to a post to add a stun and turn server to gather credentials after we have sent the offer. We can only do it before, which means that at the moment we only support the link header when in response to the options before the post, which is a bit of a limitation, but hopefully that will be overcome soon as well. And finally, at the moment, this only, At the moment, this only supports Linux because that's what I use on my own laptop. But in theory, it should be easy enough to port it to Windows and macOS as well. I just don't have much experience in development on those environments. So since this is open source, if you have a bit of experience in updating the make files to get it working there as well, this would be very welcome. And to conclude, I mean, this is how you can basically start a web client session. So for instance, in this case, that address is actually real. So it's an address that I set up for the hackathon last IETF, and it's still active if you want to play with it a bit. So if you create a web session at that address with that token, then you can just choose what you want to send as audio and video streams, and then that should just work. And you can test it using this web page over here. So since basically the WIP server talks to Janus to create a fake participant in a room, basically all you need to make sure that it is actually working is joining the same room somehow. So that link allows you to join as a passive participant. If you see something, everything is working. And in this case, we are capturing a fake audio source and a fake video source, but this could be an actual webcam, this could be streaming from a file or something else. So everything that GStreamer supports, you can actually capture here, basically. That's the main idea. And just a couple of notes on e-tags. So I started experimenting with those as well in a couple of pull requests. And right now, I made some assumptions, and some of those we have also addressed them in the discussion before, so I won't bother you too much with those. I just wanted to conclude with the fact that with the WIP client, we can actually do some experimentation as well. So if you do want to make some experimentations and early prototyping with WIP and WebRTC in general, it may be a useful tool. Because, for instance, one aspect that is important in broadcasting is the ability to use existing broadcasting tools for WebRTC as well, which is the main reason why WebRTC has not been adopted much in the broadcaster industry so far. Mainly because tools like OBS that pretty much all streamers use do not support WebRTC out of the box. So I wanted to check if I could actually already use OBS as a way to produce a stream and then send it via WebRTC somehow. And I prototyped a way using an intermediate technology that is called NDI, which is basically a standard de facto in the broadcaster industry. Basically, I had OBS, I produced something in OBS, configured an NDI output in OBS, and since GStreamer has a plugin to use NDI as a source, all I needed to do was start the web clients to capture from the NDI source that was generated possibly on another laptop over there, and then capture what OBS was producing and send it via WebRTC to Janus, which is what I did in this very silly demo over here where I was capturing myself playing guitar. I did a lot of GIFs like this was a 90s website. And then basically started, I produced this stream live and then via NDI passed it to the WIP client. The WIP client sent it to Janus, and I had, in a demo, there were about 20 people watching the WebRTC concert in real time. Basically, that was the idea. But of course, there are more interesting things that you can do beyond the silly experiment that I did, because for instance, just this week, Sergio used the WIP client to prototype adding support for new pixel formats and H.264 profiles in Chrome itself, because basically GStreamer allows you to encode everything the way that you want, which means that you can easily inject a WebRTC stream that is not strictly what the WebRTC browser expects. So you can create something and then check what the browser will accept or not that way. And that is basically all. So I don't know if I have time for questions or if you have any in the first place. Thank you.
I think we're at the top of the hour. But let's see, are there any questions? Otherwise, thank you, Renzo. Always helpful to get feedback from actual implementations. And with that, I think thank you for attending Wish. Sounds like we're good track to make it to working group last call hopefully soon. And Sean and me will take the item to figure out what to do with extensions regarding metadata and subtitles and that kind of stuff. Thank you very much for attending Wish, and hopefully you have a good and nice remaining IETF week.
Yeah, and sorry for the chair fail there at the beginning.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. My Chrome had asked me for permissions to do the screen recording again, which would have required to restart Chrome. I should have tested that before.